The doors to the grand chamber opened with a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. Ambassador Michael Torres stepped through, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Behind him walked Dr. Rachel Kim and Commander William Foster, their faces carefully blank despite the fear they all felt. The chamber stretched before them like a nightmare made real. It was massive beyond belief. The ceiling vanished into darkness 3 kilometers above. The walls curved away in every direction, lined with seats that rose in tier after tier, each one filled with an alien being. Michael counted rows upon rows of creatures that defied description. Things with tentacles and things with wings. Beings made of crystal and beings made of light. Creatures that floated and creatures that crawled. There were hundreds of different species, maybe thousands, all watching as the 3 humans walked toward the center of the chamber. The floor beneath their feet glowed, with symbols Michael couldn't read. Each step felt like walking toward execution. At the center of the massive room sat a single platform, small and exposed. A spotlight fell on it from above, making it look like a stage where prisoners stood before judgment. "That's where we stand," Rachel whispered, her voice tight. "I know," Michael replied. They reached the platform and climbed up. The moment they stood in the circle of light, the entire chamber fell silent. Thousands of eyes and things that served as eyes turned toward them. Michael felt the weight of their stares like physical pressure against his chest. High above, at the very top of the chamber, something moved. A being of pure, crystalline structure floated down from the highest seat. It glowed from within, pulsing with colors that hurt to look at directly. The prime voice of the Galactic Council. Humans of Earth. The voice came from everywhere at once, resonating in Michael's bones. "You have been summoned to answer for your actions." Michael's mouth went dry. This was it. The moment Earth had been dreading for 6 months. "The charges are serious," the prime voice continued. "Violation of territorial boundaries. Unauthorized colonization. Technology development that breaks established protocols. The evidence against your species is substantial." Michael wanted to defend himself immediately, to explain, to argue. But he forced himself to stay quiet and listen. Rachel had coached him on this. Don't react. Don't show fear. Wait for the right moment. "Your species entered Council space 97 years ago," a new voice spoke. Michael looked up to see a creature with 4 eyes and scaled skin. "In that time, you have accumulated more violations than most species do in 1,000 years. This suggests either profound incompetence or deliberate disregard for galactic law." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The sound was strange, combining clicks and hums and sounds Michael had no words for. But the meaning was clear. They had already decided humans were guilty. "Threshold systems," another alien spoke, this one resembling a floating jellyfish. 7 worlds you claimed as your own. 7 worlds that were protected territory. Did you not see the boundary markers? "We saw markers," Michael said carefully, "but we couldn't read them. The language was dead, abandoned thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. We had no way to know what they said." "That is your problem, not ours," the scaled creature replied. "The markers existed. Your failure to understand them does not excuse the trespass." Michael felt anger building in his chest, but he kept it controlled. Then perhaps the Council should maintain its markers in languages that current species can understand. Leaving ancient warnings in dead languages and then punishing people for not reading them seems less like law enforcement and more like setting traps. The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Several aliens rose from their seats, their body language aggressive, even if Michael couldn't understand their species. "You will show respect," the prime voice commanded. "You stand before the accumulated authority of civilizations that mastered space before your ancestors left their caves." "I'm showing the respect you've earned," Michael said, his voice steady. "And right now, that's not much." Rachel touched his arm in warning, but Michael had made his decision. Playing humble wasn't working. These aliens had already decided to make an example of humanity. Might as well go down fighting. "The Council has reached a preliminary decision," the prime voice announced. "Earth will withdraw from all threshold systems within 6 months. All human commercial activities in Council space are suspended. All exploration rights are revoked, and Earth will pay reparations of 400 trillion credits. The number echoed through the chamber. 400 trillion. An impossible sum. More money than Earth could generate in a century. You can't be serious. Commander Foster spoke for the first time, his military training showing in his rigid posture. That would destroy our entire economy. Then your assets will be seized, the jellyfish creature said, with what sounded like satisfaction. Your ships, your stations, your colonies, everything, until the debt is paid. Michael's mind raced. This wasn't justice. This was economic warfare disguised as legal procedure. They were trying to crush humanity before it became too powerful, too advanced, too much of a threat to the established order. He looked at Rachel. She nodded slightly. She'd come to the same conclusion. We need time to consult with our government, Michael said. You have 72 hours to begin compliance, the Prime voice replied. This session is concluded. The light around their platform dimmed. Guards, creatures in armor that gleamed like mercury, gestured toward the exit. The three humans walked out of the chamber in silence. They said nothing until they were back in their shuttle, sealed away from alien ears. They're going to destroy us, Foster said, his calm facade cracking. 400 trillion credits. It's impossible. They know it's impossible. That's the point. They're afraid, Rachel said quietly. She was typing rapidly on her datapad, pulling up files and statistics. Look at this. I've been tracking the data since we arrived. Do you know how much Council technology relies on human innovations? Michael leaned over to look at her screen. The numbers made his breath catch. It can't be right, he said. It is, Rachel confirmed. Medical technology, transportation systems, communication networks, power generation. In 97 years, we've contributed more advancement to galactic civilization than the rest of the Council combined in the last 1,000 years. We shared everything freely. We thought we were being good neighbors. And they repaid us by trying to bankrupt our planet, Foster finished. Michael sat back, his mind working through the implications. If Rachel's data was correct, and he knew it was because Rachel was never wrong about data, then humanity had an option they hadn't considered. What if we leave? He said slowly. Rachel and Foster both looked at him. Not just the threshold systems, Michael continued. Everything. Every human in Council space, every researcher, every engineer, every technician. What if we all just go home? They'd collapse, Rachel said, understanding dawning in her eyes. The systems we maintain, the innovations we provide, the expertise we share, without us, Council space would fall apart. Exactly, Michael said. They think they're punishing us, but we're not the ones who are dependent. They are. He opened a secure channel to Earth. The message he needed to send was simple, but it would change everything. Recall all human personnel from Council space. Immediately, all of them. The response came back within an hour. Authorization granted. Michael looked out the viewport at the glowing Council headquarters, the symbol of galactic power and authority. Let's see how they do without us, he said quietly. The recall signal went out at midnight, and the galaxy would never be the same. The recall signal reached every human in Council space within 12 hours. It was a simple message encoded in quantum channels that only human equipment could detect. 3 words. Come home now. On Manufacturing Station Helix 7. Engineer Thomas Park read the message twice before he believed it. He was in the middle of calibrating a filtration system that processed raw materials for 6 different colonies. The system had been running perfectly for 3 years under his supervision. His alien supervisor. A being named Vex, with blue scales and too many fingers, noticed him packing immediately. What are you doing? Vex asked, confusion rippling across his scales. I've been recalled to Earth, Thomas said simply. I'm leaving tonight. But the systems, the production quotas. You can't just leave. Thomas pulled up the maintenance manual on his screen. Thousands of pages of procedures and diagrams. Everything you need is in here. Follow the instructions, and you'll be fine. Bex looked at the manual, then back at Thomas. These are procedures. They tell us what to do, but not why it works. When problems occur, when adjustments are needed, we need to understand the principles behind the systems. Then I guess you'll have to figure it out, Thomas said. He wasn't being cruel. He was being honest. For 3 years he'd tried to teach the underlying concepts, but the Caltharians always wanted simple steps to follow, not deep understanding. Now they would learn the hard way. By the time Thomas left the station, warning lights were already blinking on several control panels. Similar scenes repeated across Council space. Human doctors quietly closed their research files and booked transport home. Human technicians finished their shifts and didn't return the next day. Human scientists archived their work and departed without ceremony. They weren't sabotaging anything. They weren't deleting data or destroying equipment. They were simply leaving, taking their knowledge and expertise with them. Within 36 hours, the problems began. On the medical research station, orbiting Vrothia Prime, Dr. Lisa Chang had been working on pharmaceutical synthesis for 2 years. She specialized in adjusting molecular structures to maximize effectiveness while minimizing side effects. It was delicate work that required understanding chemistry at the quantum level. The day after she left, the Vrothian scientists tried to continue her work. They followed her procedures exactly. They used the same equipment, the same materials, the same measurements, but the results were wrong. The medication they produced was less effective, sometimes dangerously so. Dr. Helix, the senior Vrothian researcher, stared at the test results in growing panic. What did we do wrong? We followed every step. Look here, his assistant said, pointing at one procedure in the manual. It says adjust pH to optimal level, but it doesn't say what optimal is. Dr. Chang must have known instinctively what value to use. Contact her, Helix ordered. Offer her whatever she wants to come back. The message went out. The reply came 6 hours later. Just 2 words. I'm home. No negotiation. No price. Just a door closing quietly but firmly. At the council headquarters, the emergency session was barely controlled chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were all trying to speak at once. Their various forms of communication creating a noise that overwhelmed the translation systems. The Prime voice tried to maintain order, but even its authority seemed diminished. The humans are attempting to pressure us through disruption. We must remain firm. Show them we will not be blackmailed. Blackmailed? The representative from Frelia stood, their plant-like body trembling with anger. They haven't demanded anything. They haven't threatened anything. They just left. And our agricultural systems are failing because we don't know how to maintain them without human expertise. You have the maintenance. Manuals, the Prime voice said. Manuals are not. Understanding, the Frelian shot back. We can follow steps, but when problems arise that aren't in the manual, we're helpless. The humans understood these systems at a fundamental level. We just knew which buttons to push. A security alert flashed through the chamber. One of the counselors pulled up the notification and went very still. What is it? The Prime voice demanded. The defense network around Balexia. It's experiencing cascade failures. The monitoring systems are registering massive blind spots in coverage. That's impossible. The Balaxian military is the strongest in Council space. The detection and tracking systems were designed and maintained by human engineers, the counselor explained. They left yesterday. The automated systems are trying to compensate, but they're failing. We're blind to anything smaller than a battleship right now. Pirates will notice that, someone said quietly. Within hours, they did. The first raid hit a mining colony on the Balaxian frontier. 3 ships came in fast, looted the facility, and vanished before defense forces could respond. The second raid followed 6 hours later. Then a third. The news spread through Council space like wildfire. The mighty Balaxian defense network had holes in it, big enough to fly a fleet through. On the 4th day after the recall, the Council received its first formal request for help. The Vrothian Medical Authority sent a direct appeal to Earth. bypassing the council entirely. They needed pharmaceutical experts immediately. Patients were dying. Earth's response was brief, but not unkind. The council has suspended all human activities in their space. We are complying with that order. We wish you well in finding alternative solutions. The message was perfectly polite and completely devastating. Earth was simply following the council's own ruling. If they wanted humans to stop working in council space, then humans would stop working in council space. More requests followed. The Keltharians needed engineers. The Freelians needed agricultural specialists. The Antares Collective needed navigation experts. Every request received the same response. We're complying with the council's orders. On the 5th day, Counselor Thane requested a private meeting with the Prime Voice. Thane was old, even by galactic standards. He'd served on the council for longer than most species had been spacefaring. We made a terrible mistake, Thane said without preamble. The humans will return once they realize they need us, the Prime Voice insisted. But there was less certainty in its tone now. No, they won't, Thane said. He pulled up data, charts and graphs that painted a devastating picture. Look at this. Really look at it. In 97 years, humans have become essential to almost every system in council space. Not because they forced themselves into those positions, but because they were better. Their innovations were more effective. Their solutions were more elegant. Their expertise was more reliable. We used their contributions without ever acknowledging how dependent we'd become. We have our own experts, the Prime Voice said, who learned from humans, Thane replied, who followed human-designed procedures, who used human-built systems. And when those systems fail in unexpected ways, our experts don't know what to do because they never learned the underlying principles. They just learned to follow instructions. The Prime Voice dimmed, its glow fading. What do you suggest? We negotiate. We apologize. We offer them real membership, real equality, real respect. It would be admitting weakness. No, Thane said firmly. It would be admitting reality. We are weak without them. The last 5 days have proven that beyond any doubt. Before the Prime Voice could respond, another alert came through. This one was worse than all the others combined. Prime Voice, a technician's voice came through, tight with fear. The station's power distribution network is failing. We're losing containment on the main reactor. Switch to backups, the Prime Voice ordered. We are on backups. The primary systems failed 2 days ago. The backups were designed to work with optimization algorithms that the human engineers maintained. Without those algorithms, the backups are burning out faster than designed. How long do we have? 18 hours. Maybe less. The Prime Voice looked at Thane. How many humans maintained the power systems? 7, Thane said. All recalled 5 days ago. All attempts to contact them have failed. Then contact Earth directly. The government. Offer them whatever they want. It's too late for that, Thane said quietly. We sentenced them to economic destruction. We tried to seize their colonies and crush their future. And now we want to negotiate as if none of that happened? Then what do? We evacuate the station, Thane said. And we hope that gives us enough time to figure out how to apologize convincingly enough that humans might consider forgiving us. The evacuation order went out an hour later. The headquarters of galactic civilization, the seat of council power for 10,000 years, was being abandoned because the people who maintained it had gone home and across council space. Species were beginning to realize a terrifying truth. They had built their modern civilization on a foundation they didn't understand, maintained by people they had taken for granted. Now that foundation had walked away, and everything built on top of it was starting to crumble. The breaking point came on day 8. The colony world of Harvest Prime had been experiencing food shortages since day 3 of the human withdrawal. The agricultural systems that fed 60 million people were operating at less than 30% efficiency. Governor Dane stood in the planetary command center watching live feeds of riots in the capital city. People were hungry, scared, and angry. Deploy security to protect the food distribution centers, his aide suggested nervously. And if the people try to take the food by force, do we shoot them? Dane asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. These are our citizens. They're hungry because we don't know how to maintain the systems that feed them. The council said to remain firm, that the humans will return when they realize they need us. Dane looked at his aide with something close to pity. The humans aren't coming back. Not to the council. Not on the council's terms. He made a decision that he knew would change everything. Open a direct channel to Earth. Not through council systems. Direct governor. That's bypassing official protocols. The council will consider it treason. The council can't keep their own headquarters powered, Dane said flatly. I don't care what they consider it. My people need to eat. The message went out on secure channels. Within 6 hours, Earth responded. Not with demands or conditions, but with a simple question. What do you need? Food, Dane replied. Our agricultural systems are failing. We need human experts to restore them. The council suspended all human activities in their space, Earth's representative said. We're complying with that order? Then we withdraw from the council, Dane said. The words came out easier than he expected. Harvest Prime declares independence from council authority. We request an independent treaty with Earth. There was a long pause. Then, stand by. 4 hours later, the response came. Earth would send agricultural specialists immediately. In exchange, Harvest Prime would share their biotechnology research with human scientists. Not as payment for services, but as an equal exchange between partners. The specialists arrived within 2 days. They brought not just solutions, but training. They taught Freilian engineers the principles behind the systems, not just the procedures. They explained why things worked, not just what to do within a week. Harvest Prime's food production was back to 80% and climbing. More importantly, the Freilian engineers now understood their own systems well enough to maintain them independently. When the council learned of Harvest Prime's withdrawal, they threatened sanctions. Governor Dane's response was broadcast publicly. Sanction us with what? You can't keep your own station powered. You can't protect your own borders. You can't feed your own people. You have no authority left, only the pretense of it. The words echoed through council space like a gunshot. Within 24 hours, 3 more Freilian colonies announced their withdrawal from the council. Then the Antares Collective began negotiating an independent treaty with Earth. Then 5 more species sent secret messages to Earth, asking about the possibility of separate agreements. The exodus had started, and nothing the council did could stop it in the abandoned council headquarters. Now relocated to a backup facility with failing life support, the emergency sessions had become continuous. The Prime voice no longer left its position, trying desperately to hold together an organization that was fracturing in real time. We've lost 19 species to independent Earth treaties, Counselor Thane reported. His voice held no emotion anymore, just exhausted facts. Another 37 are in active negotiations. At this rate, we'll lose half our membership within a month. Then we make an example, the Balaxian representative said. Military action against the traitors. Show them the cost of abandoning the council. With what military? Thane asked tiredly. Your defense network has holes a child could fly through. You've suffered 12 pirate raids in 8 days. You want to deploy your forces for political intimidation while criminals are looting your colonies. Then what do you suggest? The Prime voice demanded. What I suggested 8 days ago. We negotiate with Earth. We offer real equality, real respect, real partnership. That would be surrender. Thane agreed. It would be complete and total surrender of our pride, our assumed superiority, our 10,000-year-old belief that we're the center of galactic civilization. He looked around at the assembled representatives, most of them looking diminished and afraid. But surrender is better than extinction. The words hung heavy in the room. A medical report came through from Vrothia Prime. The death toll from medication failures had reached 8,000. The number was climbing. Dr. Helix had sent 17 messages to Earth, each one more desperate than the last. The final message was just 2 words repeated over and over. Please help. Earth's response had been heartbreaking in its simplicity. We want to help. But the Council forbids us from working in their space. Ask them to change the rules. It was a masterful piece of political positioning. Earth wasn't being cruel. They were being obedient. The Council had made the rules, and Earth was following them exactly. If those rules were causing people to die, that was the Council's problem to solve. Contact Earth, the Prime Voice said finally. Not as the Council. As me personally. Tell them I want to negotiate. The message went out immediately. The response came back within 3 hours. Earth would accept a negotiation, but only if certain conditions were met first. What conditions? The Prime Voice asked. Thane read the list. All charges against humanity must be dropped immediately and publicly. The 400 trillion credit fine must be cancelled. The threshold systems must be recognized as legitimate human territory. And any negotiation must be between equals, not between a superior authority and a subordinate species. They want us to admit we were wrong, the Prime Voice said. Yes, Thane confirmed. Completely and publicly. If we do that, we lose all credibility. We have no credibility left, Thane said bluntly. We're meeting in a backup facility because we can't power our own headquarters. We're watching our member species abandon us to sign independent treaties with the people we tried to destroy. Our military can't protect our borders. Our medical systems are failing. Our infrastructure is collapsing. What exactly do you think we're protecting by maintaining pride? The Prime Voice dimmed to almost nothing. When it spoke again, its voice was barely a whisper. Draft the announcement. Drop all charges. Cancel the fine. Recognize human territory. And schedule the negotiation. There's one more thing, Thane said quietly. They want a public apology. Not for breaking rules, but for how humanity was treated. For being exploited, dismissed, and betrayed. Apology acknowledges wrongdoing. Yes, it does. The Prime Voice was silent for a long time. Around it, the other counselors waited. Everyone knew this was the moment everything changed. Either the Council adapted and survived, or it clung to pride and died. Then I will apologize, the Prime Voice said finally. Publicly and sincerely, because they deserve it, and because it's true. The message went out across all channels. The Galactic Council formally dropped all charges against humanity. The impossible fine was cancelled. The threshold systems were recognized as human sovereign territory. And the Prime Voice issued a public statement that shocked the galaxy. We were wrong. Not in procedure or in law, but in principle and in heart. We treated humanity as a resource to exploit rather than a partner to respect. We punished them for our own failures of communication and maintenance. We tried to crush them because we feared their potential. We were wrong in every way that matters, and we apologize without reservation or excuse. The statement was broadcast to every system in Council space. Many species who had already withdrawn from the Council saw it and paused their negotiations with Earth. Maybe the Council could change. Maybe it was worth trying to reform rather than abandon, but the damage was done. The Council's authority was shattered. Its membership was fractured. Its infrastructure was failing, and everyone knew that humanity held the key to whether galactic civilization would survive or fragment into chaos. On Earth, Michael Torres read the Council's apology with his team gathered around him. Do you believe it? Rachel asked. Does it matter? Michael replied. What matters is whether they're willing to actually change. Words are easy. Action is hard, so what do we do? Commander Foster asked. Michael thought about the thousands of messages they'd received. Species begging for help. Patients dying in hospitals. Children going hungry. Engineers staring at systems they couldn't fix. It wasn't their fault. They'd been let down by a council that took human expertise for granted and never bothered to ensure real knowledge transfer. We negotiate, Michael said finally. But not to restore the old system. We negotiate to build something better. Something where every species is actually equal. Where contribution is respected. Where newcomers are partners instead of probationary members. And if they refuse? Rachel asked. Michael smiled slightly. Then we build our own network with the species smart enough to accept genuine partnership. Either way, humanity moves forward. He opened a secure channel to the Council and began typing a response. The words came easily, each one laying the foundation for a new galactic order. The Council had tried to break humanity. Instead, they'd broken themselves. Now it was time to see if they could build something better from the pieces. The new. The council chamber looked nothing like the old one. Gone were the tiered seats that placed species above each other. Gone was the isolated platform where accused parties stood alone and exposed. The new design was circular, with every delegation seated at the same level, facing each other across a central space where holographic displays could be shared by all. Michael Torres walked into the chamber. 3 weeks after receiving the council's apology, behind him came not just Rachel and Foster, but also Secretary General Patricia Moore and Admiral David Chen. Earth had brought its full authority to this negotiation. Around the circle, representatives from 700 species waited. Some had never left the council. Others had withdrawn and were now considering whether to return. All of them knew this meeting would determine the shape of galactic civilization for generations to come. The prime voice occupied a seat in the circle like any other delegate. No elevation, no special throne, just another voice in the discussion. We gathered to discuss the reformation of council structure. The prime voice began. Humanity has provided a proposal for new charter amendments. These amendments would fundamentally change how the council operates. A holographic document appeared in the center of the circle, visible from all angles. The proposed new charter glowed with highlighted sections, each one representing a change that would have been unthinkable a month ago. Patricia Moore stood. Before we begin detailed discussion, I want to establish the core principle underlying all these amendments. Every species is equal in fundamental rights and dignity. Not equal in age or technological development or military strength, but equal in worth and equal in voice. If we can't agree on that principle, the rest of this discussion is pointless. Some species are objectively more advanced than others. A delegate from the Keltharian system said. That's simply factual reality. Advanced in what way? Rachel challenged. You had manufacturing systems that were the envy of the galaxy, right up until the humans who maintained them went home and you discovered you didn't. Understand your own technology well enough to keep it running. Is that advanced? The Keltharian delegate's scales shifted color in what might have been embarrassment. The question isn't who's more advanced, Michael said. It's whether advancement gives you the right to treat others as inferior. We're saying it doesn't. Species that's been spacefaring for 10,000 years doesn't automatically deserve more respect than one. It's been out here for a century. Respect is earned through actions, not accumulated through time. Counselor Thane stood slowly. I've existed for 9,000 years. I've served this council for 6,000. And I've learned more about civilization in the last 3 weeks than in all those millennia. The humans are right. We confused age with wisdom, power with authority, and control with cooperation. If we want to survive, we need to accept that advancement doesn't equal superiority. So you would give a newly spacefaring species equal voting power to the council's founding members? The Balaxian representative asked. Yes, Patricia said simply. Because decisions should be made on merit of argument, not weight of history. If your position is correct, you should be able to convince others through logic and evidence, not through pulling rank. The debate continued for hours. Some species embraced the concept immediately. Others struggled with letting go of assumed hierarchy. But slowly, reluctantly, a consensus began to form. The principle of fundamental equality would be the foundation of the new charter.
Article 1
is approved, the prime voice announced after the vote. All species are recognized as equal in rights and dignity, regardless of age or development. No permanent hierarchy shall exist within the council structure. They moved to Article 2, which addressed resource sharing and knowledge exchange. The current system allows species to take freely from shared resources without contributing proportionally. Admiral Chen said, That's not cooperation. That's exploitation. The new article requires balanced contribution. If you benefit from shared research, you contribute research. If you use shared infrastructure, you help maintain it. If you take, you also give. But some species have more to give than others, someone protested. Then those species receive more, Patricia replied. The point is balance, not equality of contribution. A small species with limited resources isn't expected to contribute as much as a large, wealthy one. But every species is expected to contribute something. The era of permanent recipients is over. The vote was closer on this one. Many species had grown comfortable receiving more than they gave, but the memory of the collapse was still fresh. The infrastructure failures, the system breakdowns, the desperate scramble when human expertise vanished. Nobody wanted to return to that vulnerability. Article 2 passed with 73% approval. Article 3 dealt with territorial claims. The old system had allowed ancient, poorly maintained claims to supersede actual occupation. The new system required active maintenance of boundaries and clear documentation in current, accessible languages. You're invalidating thousands of historical claims, a delegate objected. We're invalidating claims that nobody bothered to maintain for millennia, Michael corrected. If territory is important enough to restrict, it's important enough to clearly mark and document. Otherwise, you're just creating legal traps for species who can't read dead languages. The vote on Article 3 was overwhelmingly in favor. Too many species had been caught by ancient unreadable markers. They worked through the charter methodically. Article 4 reformed decision-making processes to require genuine consensus. Building rather than simple majority votes by established powers. Article 5 created transparency requirements for all council operations. Article 6 established fair trade principles and dispute resolution systems. Then they reached Article 7, the military protocols. No species shall use military strength as political leverage. Admiral Chen Reed. Defense forces exist to protect, not to intimidate. Any use of military assets for political coercion will result in immediate sanctions. The Balaxian representative stood immediately. This strips us of legitimate diplomatic tools. Our military strength is a factor in negotiations because it's a reality that must be considered. There's a difference between reality and threat, Admiral Chen said coldly. Reality is acknowledging that you have a strong military. Threat is activating weapon locks during trade discussions. He projected evidence into the shared space. You did that 14 times in the last 5 years. Each time during negotiations with species significantly weaker than you. That's not diplomacy. That's armed robbery. The evidence was damning. Communication logs, sensor records, testimony from affected species. The Balaxians had been using their military to extort favorable terms from weaker neighbors for years. This behavior ends now, Patricia said firmly. Military strength will never again be acceptable leverage in council negotiations. Any species that violates this principle will be expelled. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only the Balaxians and a handful of their closest allies voted against it. With all articles addressed, the Prime Voice called for a final vote on the complete reform charter. All species in favor of adopting these amendments in full signify now. The chamber filled with light as voting systems activated. The holographic tally appeared in the center of the circle, climbing steadily. 647 in favor, 93 abstaining, 41 opposed. The reform charter passed with a clear supermajority. Patricia Moore stood as the vote was finalized. On behalf of humanity and our treaty partners, we accept membership in the Reformed Galactic Council. We commit to working with all species to build a civilization based on genuine equality, mutual respect, and fair cooperation. The Prime Voice dimmed its glow in what humans had learned was a gesture of respect. On behalf of the Council, we welcome humanity as full equal members. We also formally apologize for how you were treated. Not just in the recent charges, but in the 97 years before that. We took your contributions for granted, exploited your generosity, and returned your friendship with contempt. We were wrong, and we commit to being better. The apology was broadcast to every system. This wasn't a private admission. This was the Council publicly acknowledging its failures and pledging to change. Michael looked around the circle at hundreds of alien faces. Some looked relieved. Some looked hopeful. A few still looked resentful, clinging to the old hierarchies. But the overall mood was different from the intimidating judgment chamber where this had all started. This felt like the beginning of something real. "The hard part starts now," Rachel said quietly. "What do you mean?" Michael asked. "We won. The charter passed." "Words on paper are easy," Rachel replied. "Actually changing 10,000 years of ingrained behavior is hard. There will be backsliding. There will be species who try to exploit loopholes. There will be challenges we haven't imagined yet, and we deal with them," Patricia said firmly. "Together, as equals, as partners." She turned to address the full council. "This charter isn't the end of our work. It's the beginning. We've agreed on principles. Now we have to live them. That means calling out inequality when we see it, challenging exploitation when it happens, supporting each other when times are hard. We built a new foundation today. Now we have to build the civilization on top of it." Species began standing, pledging their commitment to the Reformed Council. Not out of fear or desperation anymore, but out of genuine hope that something better was possible. The session ended with agreements to reconvene in 1 week to begin implementing the new charter. As species filed out, many approached the human delegation personally, thanking them, apologizing, asking for guidance on how to actually practice equality instead of just talking about it. Michael watched it all with cautious optimism. They've changed the rules. Now they had to prove the new system could actually work. But for the first time since entering that terrifying judgment chamber, he felt like they had a real chance. 4 months after the charter reforms, Michael Torres stood in an observation lounge watching ships come and go from the rebuilt council headquarters. The station glowed with steady light now, its power systems restored and running smoothly. But the difference wasn't just in the lights. It was in who maintained them. Human engineers worked alongside Keltharian technicians, both groups teaching each other. The humans shared the principles behind the systems. The Keltharians contributed their precision and attention to detail. Together, they'd created maintenance protocols better than either species could have designed alone. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Rachel said, joining him at the window. "Just thinking about how different everything looks now," Michael replied. 4 months ago, we were walking out of a judgment chamber, about to trigger the biggest crisis in galactic history. Now look at it. Rachel pulled up a datapad showing current statistics. Trade efficiency up 41%. Research collaboration has tripled. Diplomatic incidents down 64%. The numbers don't lie. The Reformed Council is working, but Michael heard the hesitation in her voice. "But not everywhere," Rachel admitted. "The traditional council is still holding out. 23 species who rejected the reforms and established their own separate governing body." Michael had been following that situation closely. The tradition. Our council claimed to represent the legitimate continuation of the old ways. They maintained strict hierarchies, territorial claims based on ancient rights, and a belief that age granted authority. "How are they doing?" he asked. "Failing," Rachel said bluntly. "They've lost 4 more members this month. The Balaxians just applied for readmission to the Reformed Council. Even species who initially supported the traditional approach are realizing that isolation doesn't work in a connected galaxy." A notification appeared on Michael's screen. Dr. Helix from Vrothia Prime. Requesting a video call. Michael accepted immediately. Helix's face appeared, his tentacles arranged in what Michael had learned was a smile. "Ambassador Torres, I wanted to give you a personal update on our medical program." "Good news, I hope." "Very good news," Helix confirmed. "We've trained 37 Vrothian pharmaceutical specialists in human biochemical principles. Not just procedures, but actual understanding of the underlying science. Last week, 3 of them published original research that combined human molecular theory with Vrothian biological knowledge. The results are promising for treatments we never thought possible." "That's exactly what we hoped would happen," Michael said with genuine pleasure. "Different species, different perspectives, creating something neither could achieve alone." "There's more," Helix continued. "We're establishing a joint medical school. Human and Vrothian students learning from both traditions. We're calling it the Institute of Collaborative Medicine. We hope other species will join us." After the call ended, Rachel was smiling. See, that's what the Reformed Council is supposed to be. Not humans fixing everyone's problems, but everyone learning to solve problems together. The door opened, and Patricia Moore entered, followed by Counselor Thane. The ancient being moved slowly, but there was energy in its movements that hadn't been there during the crisis. "We have a situation that requires discussion," Patricia said, her expression serious. "The traditional council?" Michael guessed. "No. Something new." Thane activated a holographic display. 3 systems on the frontier have been experiencing raids by an organized pirate fleet. These aren't opportunistic attacks. They're coordinated, well-equipped, and sophisticated. And, Michael prompted, knowing there was more. The pirates are using ships and weapons that were reported stolen from traditional council space 2 months ago, Patricia said. "We have intelligence suggesting that some traditional council members might be tacitly supporting the pirates, or at least not trying very hard to stop them." "Why would they do that?" Rachel asked. "Desperation," Thane said. "The traditional council is collapsing economically. Their infrastructure is failing. Their member species are abandoning them. Some of their leaders might see piracy as a way to acquire resources they can't obtain through legitimate trade." Michael felt anger building. "That's an act of war, not officially," Patricia said. "There's no direct evidence connecting traditional council governments to the pirates, just circumstantial links and suspicions. If we accuse them without proof, we risk looking like we're persecuting species who chose not to join us. But if we do nothing, we look weak," Michael finished. "And other species might decide that raiding is a viable alternative to cooperation." They sat in silence for a moment, considering options. "What if we offer them a way out?" Rachel suggested. "Not punishment, but an alternative. Show them that cooperation is more profitable than piracy." "Explain," Patricia said. "The pirates are targeting resource-rich frontier systems, right? What if we establish joint development projects in those areas? Reformed Council and traditional council species working together, sharing the profits. Give them a legal way to access the resources they need." Thane's crystalline form pulsed thoughtfully. "That could work. If we frame it as mutual benefit rather than charity, they might accept. Pride is what's keeping them in the traditional council, but greed might bring them back to the reformed one." "It's worth trying," Patricia decided. "Draft a proposal. Make it clear this is cooperation, not a handout. Equal partnership in developing frontier resources, with profits shared based on contribution." The proposal went out the next day. The response came within a week. 5 traditional council species wanted to discuss the joint development project. 2 of them explicitly stated they were considering rejoining the Reformed Council. Meanwhile, the reforms continued to spread through council space. On Manufacturing Station Helix-7, Engineer Thomas Park was teaching a mixed class of human and Keltharian students. Not just procedures, but principles. The questions they asked challenged him to think about concepts he'd taken for granted, leading to insights that improved the systems for everyone. On Harvest Prime, the agricultural systems were running at 112% of original capacity. Frelian and human researchers had worked together to optimize the technology, combining biological understanding from both species. Governor Dane had become one of the Reformed Council's strongest advocates, frequently speaking about the benefits of genuine partnership. The Antares Collective had established a joint navigation academy with human instructors. Their natural spatial awareness, combined with human mathematical frameworks, was producing navigators who could calculate faster and more accurately than either species alone. Examples like these multiplied across council space. Not every partnership worked perfectly. There were miscommunications, cultural clashes, and failed experiments. But the overall trend was clear. Cooperation was producing results that hierarchy never had. 6 months after the charter reforms, the Reformed Council held a celebration. Not a formal ceremony, but a genuine festival where species shared their cultures, their achievements, and their hopes for the future. Michael walked through the festival grounds. Watching aliens and humans interact with easy familiarity, A Vrothian doctor was explaining pharmaceutical techniques to a group of fascinated students from 6 different species. Keltharian engineers were demonstrating precision manufacturing, while human technicians showed them optimization algorithms. Frelian chefs were teaching humans about their cuisine, while learning about human cooking methods in return. It's quite different from that first day in the judgment chamber, a voice said beside him. Michael turned to see the prime voice, no longer glowing with intimidating authority, just present as another member of the community. Very different, Michael agreed. You look different too, less formal. I feel different, the prime voice admitted. For thousands of years, I believed my role was to maintain order through authority, to be the voice that commanded and the power that enforced. Now, I'm learning to be something harder. What's that? A partner, an equal. Someone who listens as much as speaks, who learns as much as teaches. The prime voice gestured at the festival around them. This is what civilization should be. Not controlled from above, but grown from cooperation. Messy, unpredictable, but alive in a way the old council never was. There are still problems, Michael said. The pirate situation on the frontier, the traditional council holdouts, species learning to actually practice equality instead of just voting for it. We're not perfect. No, the prime voice agreed. But we're real. We're trying. We're growing. That's more than the old council ever did in its 10,000 years. As night fell over the station, the festival continued. Music from a dozen species blended in strange but beautiful harmony. Laughter translated through a dozen languages. Ideas shared across 100 different perspectives. Michael found his team gathered at one of the viewing platforms, watching Earth rise in the distance. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't walked out? Rachel asked. Sometimes, Michael admitted. We'd probably still be in council space, quietly maintaining their systems, contributing our innovations, and being treated as convenient resources instead of valued partners. And the council would still be operating on 10,000-year-old assumptions, Patricia added, slowly stagnating, eventually collapsing under the weight of its own rigid structures. So we did them a favor, Foster said with a slight smile. We did everyone a favor, Michael corrected, including ourselves. We proved that demanding respect isn't arrogant. Walking away from exploitation isn't abandonment. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to accept unfair terms. He looked at his team, then at the bustling station around them, then at Earth glowing in the distance. 4 months ago, they'd been facing economic annihilation. Now they were partners in building a new galactic civilization. The old council tried to break us, Michael said quietly. They tried to crush us before we could become a threat. Instead, they taught us our own value. They showed us what happens when the Foundation walks away. And they gave us the leverage to demand the change that was needed. So what now? Rachel asked.
Now we make sure it lasts,
Patricia said firmly. We keep calling out inequality when we see it. We keep challenging exploitation. We keep supporting genuine cooperation. The Charter gave us a framework, but we have to live it every day. And if some species refuse? Foster asked. Then they'll learn what the traditional council is learning, Michael said. That isolation is expensive. That hierarchy is fragile. That cooperation is stronger than control. The festival continued late into the night. As Michael finally headed to his quarters, he passed a group of young beings. Human and alien students sitting together, discussing physics in a mix of languages and gestures. They'd grown up in the Reformed Council. They didn't remember the old hierarchies, the assumed superiority, the exploitation dressed as order. To them, equality was normal. Cooperation was expected. Partnership was just how things worked. That was the real victory. Not the charter reforms or the treaty negotiations, but the generation growing up believing that different species could work together as genuine equals. The old Galactic Council had ruled through accumulated authority. New one was growing through mutual respect. It was messy and complicated and far from perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. All because humanity had the courage to walk out when treated unfairly, and the wisdom to walk back in when offered genuine equality, the galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly how it should be.